Enochian magic is the most potent form of magic known to the Western ceremonial current, and today we're going to be doing something I usually try to avoid on this channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Enochian magic of Dr. John Dee. I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, go down the link in the description below and subscribe over on Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to Patreon-specific content, such as early access to videos, exclusive videos, and the Occultic Manual series, which is a monthly write-up I do every month, which is more approachable than Old Grimoire, but more advanced than what I have here on the channel. So let's talk about the Enochian of Dr. John Dee, shall we? Or not. We have to talk about a big elephant in the room, actually, first, before we get into the Enochian of Dr. John Dee, in that there's two. There are two different forms of Enochian. One is the Enochian of Dr. John Dee. The other is Neo-Enochiana, created primarily by the Golden Dawn. Now, I have mentioned a long time ago that you really shouldn't be using Enochian in your rituals if you don't know what you're doing. And that is because of Neo-Enochiana. Now, and I'm just going to call that Golden Dawn Enochian from here on out, because if I don't, it's going to drive me crazy. So, Golden Dawn Enochian is the stuff that you see in, where else, the Golden Dawn magical system. Now, I have been on record, and I've said this on a couple streams, usually when you're putting a god name in Enochian, it is like throwing jet fuel into your rituals. And usually that is fine. That usually will just amp up the power of the rituals themselves. The opening by Watchtower is safe, I've done it a bunch of times. The Supreme Invoking Ritual, the Pentagram, I've done a bunch of times. All of the usual Golden Dawn rituals are fine. That's not where the problems arise. The problems arise from the Golden Dawn not having... The Golden Dawn system does not have the protections you need in order to do the evocation side of Enochian properly. And Enochian has a very large evocation system built into it. However, there are some problems with Neo-Enochiana in that everyone I know of who has done Neo-Enochiana usually does it too much, too fast, and usually has some form of mental breakdown. This is a well-documented case for people who don't have the instruction necessary to do Neo-Enochiana proper. Which is why, if you're going to be doing Enochian, I recommend doing Purist Enochian, which, fortunately, Aaron Leach has literally written multiple books on. Aaron Leach is pretty much the foremost scholar on Purist Enochian, at least he is the most published author of Purist Enochian. To the point where there is a massive section in the complete book of Ceremonial Magic by Llewellyn that is written entirely on Enochian by Aaron Leach. And a lot of this is going to come from that, but I'm, you guys who have seen my book reviews know that I don't spoil anything that is, like, practice-wise in the books. That being said, he does give a lot of history that I actually missed, and he does kind of clarify some things that I actually got wrong. Specifically about why Golden Dawn Enochian is so bad. That being said, the reason why I gave was originally way better than the actual historical reason, in my opinion. It's way more egregious. So, let's talk about that. So, all of Enochian we have is given to us from the diaries of Dr. John Dee, and it is also given from Dee's personal grimoire. However, as the story goes, this was hidden various places, and in one instance it was hidden, and a cleaning woman or some kind of maid at one point used several pieces of the book to sieve pies, to help drain pies, because apparently you needed paper to drain pies. That was the way they cooked back in the day. And so some of the pages of Dee's diaries are just fucking gone because the maid kind of destroyed them and they weren't exactly copied. There was only one copy left. But we do have majority of it, and we actually know what is kind of missing for a lot of a lot of places we know what is missing and what is not. But what happened with the Golden Dawn, and it's kind of understandable, is that in trying to add Enochian to their Golden Dawn magic system, what they did was they kind of did something you're not supposed to do in occultism. And this is something that I've actually had to talk to various people in the past about. If you're going to do something with a magical system, you need to vet the magical system. The problem with that is Dee's diaries are like spanning every day for like over 10 years or some nonsense. And they're so in-depth and so complicated that you can't just vet the entire thing, especially given the circumstances of it was in the British Museum. They had to painstakingly transcribe it, and eventually they got to a point where they found a different book that claimed to be Enochian, and was kind of somebody's attempt at using Enochian and kind of turning the Enochian system of Dr. John Dee into this completely different system. And this is where we get Golden Dawn Enochian. Now, is it possible that my original claim that they didn't have the protections is accurate? Yeah, it's actually probably more accurate. However, my reasoning of they didn't know that they needed the Heptarchia was kind of, sort of, also wrong, because if they got to that point, they got to it. So it's possible that I'm still right, but this is the actual reason for why they don't have the protections, because they weren't actually working out of Dee's diaries. They were working out of some third book, which is not the original book, and it is not the book that Dee actually wrote. This is some grimoire that was used later. This is kind of like if you took Agrippa and you said, we have the 3 books of occult philosophy, and then you said, and we got all of our magical techniques out of the 4th book of Agrippa, which was not actually written by Agrippa. This is... A lot of people ask me if I'm going to cover the 4th book of Agrippa. It wasn't written by Agrippa. It's a grimoire based on Agrippa's techniques. That's why I'm not covering it. But, back to Enochian. So that is why the Golden Dawn style of magic looks so different from Deep Purist Enochian. It's because it's not based on Deep Purist Enochian. It's based on some other offshoot of Enochian that was based on a... It's like if you were trying to streamline Enochian, and that's what they were doing because they assumed that they would be the same, which, you know, that's not true at all. But let's talk about what is actually in the magical system. Now, the magical system of Enochian is a system that was derived from Dr. John Dee and Sir Edward Kelly in their conversations with the various angels. Originally, the story goes, according to Dee's diaries, that he originally went to the Angel of Venus. He basically just asked for an angel, and that is the angel who showed up. He asked God to send him an angel, and the angel he got was the angel Anael, who was the Archangel of Venus in every modern system. And Dee knew this, and he was like, well, that's weird. Okay. And so he gets asked, and he asks, who should I be going to achieve my goals? And Anael says, you should be going to Michael. Go talk to the Archangel Michael. Do it on Sunday. And he says, it's kind of funny, because if you read the diaries, and I haven't read the full diaries, but if you read the diaries, you hear John Dee go, okay, is there anything else that I should do? Is there anything else I should know? And the angel says, we will never speak again. And to my understanding, that is true. However, after they were done talking with the Angel of Venus, they proceeded to get instructions from the other angels, and the angels gave them a kind of a 3-step setup. Now, the way that Enochian proper is supposed to work is you are supposed to have an entire altar set up, and it's supposed to have a lot of stuff, and Enochian is one of those systems that requires, and it's kind of a weird chimera system. I'll get into what I mean in a minute. But it's kind of a weird system in that it is the angels modifying old grimoires to accommodate specific situations and specific things that they wanted to be able to allow in the system. It's been noted by a lot of people, Aaron Leach especially, that if you look at the Dee Purist Enochian system, the Dee Purist Enochian system is effectively taking things like the Arbitel, the Heptameran, Ars Pauline, among others, and it is merging them all into one system with the Enochian language added on top of everything. There's a lot of letter squares. Letter squares were very popular back on those grimoires, and you can use a lot of different talismans to get the different spirits to do things for you, as well as it has a full angelic Enochian evocation system added into it, as well as an entire scrying system as well, if we look at the scrying of the Aethers. So when we look at what all Enochian can do, the answer is yes. The original Purist system had a 19-day form of initiating yourself into the system called Gebethal, which is initiating yourself into the Enochian system proper. And that is really important to know because this is very similar to a lot of other different kind of purifications. And what you're supposed to do is you are effectively trying to purify the ignorance off of yourself, is the exact wording. You are purifying the ignorance off of yourself into becoming initiated and becoming wise. That is the entire kind of point of this system. And from there, you can use it to do... You can use it for thaumaturgical things, and you can use it to get any kind of knowledge. Now, you might be wondering, Dave, you've mentioned there's a lot of evocation in this. What can these angels do? Reading right out of the complete book of Ceremonial Magic for a second, the angels are said that they can do all human knowledge in consulting, medicine, mixture of substances, so various forms of alchemy, metals and stones, which is metallurgy and various toolcrafts, transportation, the entirety of the 4 elements, the discovery of secrets, transformation, and mechanical crafts. That is very mercurial. That is a very mercurial system, and if you look at that and you think to yourself, well, that's kind of weird, why is it so mercurial? You need to understand that this is a very mercurial system because Dr. John Dee was a very mercurial person in a very Venerian age. What I mean by Venerian age is, according to the Aeonics of the Arbitel, it was given to Dr. John Dee during the age of Venus, and now we are in the age of Mercury, so all of the rulers of the planetary stuff from the old grimoires is now mercurial. However, Dr. John Dee was an astrologer, polymath, everything, and his main job was cryptography. That was his main hobby back in the day. So when you think about it like that, and the angels often had Dee exercising his cryptography muscles to basically do massive word puzzles to make some of these talismans and decrypt the tablets in various different ways so they could do things. And when that happened, a lot of things get filtered through a mercurial lens, especially if that is what your natural inclination is. Now, here's the thing about that. You can use Enochian to do basically everything. However, for a full Enochian setup, the Purist method, it's going to take a lot of time, effort, and it's going to be a massive pain in the ass because you're going to basically need Aaron Leech's entire Enochian system setup. However, there's also the other version, which is the Golden Dawn Enochian. Now, Golden Dawn Enochian, as I mentioned, is dangerous if you don't have the proper tools. So I'm just going to flat out say, if you do not have the full Enochian setup, don't do the evocation! Don't. If you do evocation, it will be generally a kind of a problem. However, if you go through, there are different methods of using the system in various different limited ways that the Golden Dawn has used in the past, such as the opening by Watchtower, the various invocations of the Enochian god names, but not using the Enochian spirits, as it were. The various different forms of non-evocationary uses in the Golden Dawn system are fairly good because they are using the power of Enochian for the magical processes that they are planning on using. So you could theoretically sub in an Enochian god name in your invocation of the pentagram to call up more powerfully the forces of, say, elemental water, for example. However, from experience, don't fucking do what I just said, because that will cause a massive rainstorm. What seems to happen when you use the Enochian system in your regular magic, when you mingle these, is it does kind of cause the spirits to directly affect things more drastically. So if you're using the elemental powers of water, and you're calling up using the Enochian god names, because, let's be honest, everyone has wanted to try, well, what if we sub in a god name here and there? And if you sub in the Enochian ones, it Every time I have seen it done, it has started to rain at the location, despite clear skies. It does not matter. It usually causes some form of like massive water situation. And this is very common because if you are misusing the elements will kind of naturally, your space will be energetically overloaded with these particular elements. So, and that's going to cause problems in and of itself if you don't keep it in check. But the main thing is, if you are looking at Enochian, the Angels of Dr. John Dee are pretty fucking cool. Let's be honest. Enochian is this weird thing that has been mythologized very much like the Abramelin, but I would almost say to a different kind of, in a different way. Enochian is this like weird, like pinnacle spot in Western ceremonial magic, because we have all of these old grimoires. And if you look at the natural progression of somebody who's getting into ceremonial magic in the modern internet age, it usually is going to look like something like this. You start out by going and you find some YouTuber, and then that YouTuber recommends you some form of initiation book into either Thelema or the Golden Dawn. And then from there, you end up starting that, and you end up accumulating tools, and you accumulate power, and you accumulate magical knowledge and experience, and you start learning different things. And when you start learning these different things, you start hearing about this weird Enochian stuff that makes people go crazy. Because that happens a lot. Enochian does make people go crazy. But only if it's done improperly. Dee and Kelly were not crazy. A lot of people do a lot of Enochian. Aaron Leach isn't crazy. And they do it fine. Because they are doing it in a very constructed and a very organized way with a lot of protections. The protections are important. And a lot of the modern Enochian system is like interfacing directly with the divine through just no filter, just like we're just going to grab the high voltage power lines and that's what we're going to do. That's how it feels when you're dealing with the Enochian system in an unprotected way. And then people get addicted to it because it's a lot more holy, because they got this allegedly from angels, and the angels took every major grimoire we use. I want you to realize this. The Lemegeton, the Arbitel, the Ars Pauline is part of the Lemegeton, but still, various different forms of the Lesser Key, all taken. Then you have the Angels of the Planetary Powers. That's like Trithemius 101. You have all of the things that all of the angels then proceeded to give them an angelic language system. Language in this time is phenomenology. That is supposed to all be involving various different forms of magical powers. And it's, you know, they believed that words had a specific power to them. So this constructed language that was given to the Dee and Kelly by the angels, historically, if you look at what that was supposed to be the purest form of symbology to these people. Because according to the way that we believed it back in the past was that language had a connection to the actual object. And if you got a language directly from angels, allegedly this is what they were channeling. If you got a language directly from angels, they believed that that was the purest form of the symbol, linguistically speaking at least. Because language is very important, and that kind of ties into why it's so mercurial. Now, as for should you do Enochian, if you need me to answer that question, you shouldn't be doing Enochian. If you need me to answer that question of should you try out Enochian, you should not be doing Enochian. This is one of those cases where I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to really talk about the history of Enochian for a bit. Because, and this is a very scattered smattering of various different things, because I wanted to talk about Enochian because it is one of my favorite things. Enochian is one of my favorite topics, because Enochian really is, and here at the end of the video here, I want to get into what I think Enochian is. The reason why Enochian is so potent is because Enochian is the highest coursework we have. Enochian is the most potent form of magic we have because it is the only form of magic that was assisted by direct spiritual angels in its construction in the modern era. Enochian was given to Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly by angels. I'm going to say that that's what happened. And these angels proceeded to try to rectify a situation that had been going on in magic for a long time. And that was that magic for a long period of time in the West had kind of been stagnating. And if you look at Eastern traditions, those Eastern traditions are now living traditions, but there is no living tradition in the West. It is effectively like we keep having to regrow the tree of Western ceremonial magic on the corpses of various other magical systems, which is what Enochian is in and of itself, but the angels were trying to rectify this in some capacity so that they wouldn't have to keep doing this. And that is why Enochian is still around, because Dee didn't want it around. After Dee and Kelly's conversations, every other notebook that Dee had got burned because Dee got really mad. This is the one thing that survived. So we do have these because the angels wanted to keep this. So my opinion is, if you want to put like a grade to it, this is the only Adeptus Minor or Adeptus Major work we have that is actually published, because that's what God wanted. Dee didn't want it published, but the angels and God preserved everything that we needed in order to get it to the right people. So that's what I think. I have been Dave the Amateur Magus. Once again, if you enjoy what I do here and you like me rambling about various esoteric topics, subscribe over on Patreon, where I have more rants and I have more videos, early access to videos and all that stuff. Hope everyone is having a good day, and if you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy.